That's over 27 years. So we came back, and then the negotiations started and all of that. What was very extraordinary for us was that there was only one reception party for us after all of those years in exile, where people said, come, we want to say welcome home, have a drink, have something to eat. And it was the Mosenekes who did that. And that was the only party we had. And I really wanted to say thank you very much for that. I've never said it before. This was in 1990. But I thought this must be an occasion to say that. And the second thing I want to say, thanks to Judge Moseneke here, you recall that at some point, he decided to abandon the law because he wanted to be rich. So he got himself into business with the late Dr. Nthato Motlana. And so, this was a wrong time for the country for him to do that. Because there's this challenge that we're all facing, which is the transformation of the judiciary. And so we needed people who were truly qualified to be judges. Not only technically, but also politically understanding where we come from and what we're trying to achieve. So he decides to become a businessman. So we discussed it. We discussed him behind his back and said, we need to get that Dikgang back. So I spoke to him and said that. I said, you really have to come back. I'm not quite sure that he agreed. You'll find the story also in the book. Because then Madiba spoke to him, and then the late Arthur Chaskalson spoke to him. In the end, they agreed. And I really want to say thanks a lot for that. Because he abandoned work, what he was doing. We might be sitting today with a billionaire. But when the nation called and said, Dikgang, here is work to be done, he came. I really want to say thanks for that. The last thing I want to do is to sell the book. We should, all of us, buy the book. It tells a very, very inspiring story. And I think it's a kind of story that we need to be telling today. Because part of my worry about the country is that many of us have lost direction. In this focus that Dikgang Moseneke had from when he was young, to come to this conclusion that he must be his own liberator. And I'm saying many of us, I sense, today don't quite know what it is that we should do. Here is this South Africa, which is in its 22nd year of democracy. Very high levels of unemployment, and therefore very high levels of poverty. You look at Johannesburg, Mayor. If you fly over Johannesburg, even if you are a foreigner, you can tell what are the white suburbs, what are the townships, from the trees. The suburbs are green and the townships are desert. Nothing has changed in terms of settlement patterns over 22 years. That's a problem. The health system is in problems in the country. Health delivery is one of our challenges. Even have a crisis in terms of social cohesion. People tell me that one of the problems here in Pretoria or Tshwane is Nyaope. Which is destroying a lot of young people. That's a problem. I was looking at some figures the other day about higher education. And one thing that I noticed is a very high dropout rate among students who are on the NSFAS scholarships. And one can understand why. Because these are basically young people who come from poor families. Therefore, they would not have gone to Model C schools and then private schools and so on. So they come to university underprepared for university studies. And after the first, second year, they drop out. Not because there's no money and so on, but they can't cope. And that's a problem of the schools. I keep telling this story. Many, many years ago, I was a chancellor of a teacher training college in Mpumalanga. So I would go there to hand out certificates, which is what chancellors do. So after we had done all of that, I speak to the principal. I say, Principal, we need to change something radically here. Because out of every 100 students who get the certificates, 98 pass biblical studies with distinction. Literally, seriously. 98% biblical studies distinction. Accountancy, 1 out of 100. Sociology, things like that, 2 out of 100. So I said to the principal, I like the Bible, but it's not going to take us to the moon. So we've got to do something about this. So he says to me, as Deputy President at the time, he says to me, Deputy President, I agree. But I honestly don't know what to do. Because what you see, what you've noticed, these distinctions in biblical studies, is it comes from teachers who graduated here. Once the subject biblical studies was made a matriculation subject, then the young people at high school would do this because it's easy. So by the time they come here, they've got these distinctions, they've got this biblical studies thing from high school. They'll come out of college with a distinction in biblical studies, they become teachers, they reproduce other distinctions in biblical studies. Now it's a serious problem. That is why you then get this high dropout rate among the NSFAS students at universities. You can't solve that problem without addressing the problem of schools. So I'm really saying this to say, Judge Moseneke answered the question on education, that I'm absolutely convinced that what we need to do is to look at the educational system as a whole. You can't, it's not possible to deal with the question of education piecemeal. We'll fail if we do that. Always fail. We have to deal with this thing comprehensively. And secondly, we've got to understand that we are in South Africa. And there is no way we're going to run away from the challenge of ending the high levels of unemployment and poverty. That matter must be addressed. The question of education is very important, quite correct, Judge. All of us want all our people to be educated. It's very necessary for the development of the country. And so indeed, there must be this access to universities, to TVET colleges, and so on. But we must understand that that goes parallel with all of these other challenges. There is none of the challenges which face us is unique. And you say, if you solve this one problem, you've solved the problems of South Africa. It's incorrect. We have got to tackle all of these things together. Sometimes watching the news, seeing a lot of the demonstrations, I wonder to myself, sometimes, not always, am I watching comrades or am I watching ladies and gentlemen? Because a comrade, their own liberator, would see it as their task to make sure that we effect this transformation of our country in all respects, as a comrade. Ladies and gentlemen, of course, this is my thing, I want this for myself and that's it. That those are ladies and gentlemen. Comrades don't behave like that. Now, everything I've just said, you will see in this book. So I'm urging all of us, let's buy it. Fortunately, me, I got a free copy. Thanks a lot.
All right, there is the live pictures coming out of Atteridgeville in Pretoria, where former President Thabo Mbeki has just been speaking on the new book by the retired Deputy Chief Justice Dikgang Moseneke titled My Own Liberator, touching on a number of issues, but the one that is really contentious is the one on higher education, where he lamented the high dropout rate among students, particularly those that are funded by NSFAS. He was saying that the dropout rate will only be solved once the education system as a whole is sorted out. And he also reiterated that the country's problems need to be tackled, all of them and all at the same time. He also thanked the retired Deputy Chief Justice for abandoning a business career to go into the civil service, and also said he was worried that many of today's leaders have lost direction and that they do not know what exactly needs to be done to solve the country's problems. But on a lighter note, saying that he left South Africa in 1962, returning in 1990, and the Mosenekes were the only ones that hosted a welcome reception for them. Well, that was the launch of the book My Own Liberator, written by Dikgang Moseneke, the retired Deputy Chief Justice. We'll take a short break now, but don't go away. More news coming up right after this.